Hello, my name is Andy Mullins. I'm the author of a book by the name of Parenting for Character. I'm in Melbourne, Australia. In the next few minutes, I'd like to focus on the joy of Catholicism and how particularly apt Christmas is a time for us to reflect on that. But I'm going to start with a relatively tough story about a friend of mine who was a tennis partner, Stephen, who passed away about 5 years ago, just after Christmas. And I went to see him a number of times in the hospital. He was the father of 3 young children. And it was obviously massively tough for himself and his wife and his children, the whole experience of his recurring cancer. I went to see him several times in the hospital, and the first time I went, he was writing Christmas cards. The next time I went, he was writing instructions for the funeral. And then on Christmas Day, I received a message from him, a text, which said, "We are celebrating Christmas with joy. It is great to have such a celebration at this time, to take us away from our troubles." A short text, but how moving from somebody who within weeks will have passed away. And it captures the idea for us that our faith gives us this treasure, that our happiness does not depend on events. Our happiness doesn't depend on what people say, what people do, the circumstances around us. Our happiness, our joy comes from who we are, that we are children of God and God is our Father. And even difficult things that come our way, that God our Father allows this because this life is just the doormat of heaven. We have to really make this part of our life, don't we? If you have children at home and you are in the great responsibility of educating those children for life, it's important for us that we manifest in our lives the joy that faith brings. If we don't do that, we will shortchange the children, and in fact something much more at risk is that they won't take to their own lives the faith that you and I value. This is big, this is massive. Think about this. You don't want a young adult child to come in to your kitchen and hug you and say, "Mum or Dad, I love you so much, but the values you have had in your life never seem to make you happy. You always seem so stressed. You always seem so worried about money or about what's going on in the world. You're one of those cranky Catholics. I'm sorry, I love you. You're my mum, you're my dad, but I've got to find something in life that makes me happy. I'm sorry." And then they walk out. It's never over, but it's not a good start, is it? We really want to make sure that right from the time kids are young, that we help them to realize that the greatest treasure in life possible has been given to us and that we are passing it on to them. And therefore, we have to make sure that that treasure is showing on our face, that your face is the first teacher at home. You have to be so joyful, and you have to make sure that the joy that you manifest is very deeply associated with your faith and with the events of our faith. I'll give you another story. A friend of mine, actually the architect of the university centre I'm involved in here in Melbourne, he said to me, he was talking about a colleague of his, and he said, "This guy was giving me a hard time. He was talking about how Catholics do this and Catholics do that, and he was obviously pretty wound up about it and fairly stressed and cranky about it. And he said, 'You Catholics, you just worship saints.' And then my friend steps back and he says to his mate, listen, why are you so stressed? Why are you so unhappy in life? Didn't your mother teach you about the joy of Catholicism? Because honestly, in my life, and he went on to talk to his friend, this is the greatest treasure that I have. I run a successful business. I employ 30 people, but the joy of my life is my faith. And this is what I want to pass on to my kids. I don't want to give them houses and cars. I want to give them my faith, because I know this is what will make them happy. I mean, marvelous message, isn't it? But you and I, we have to pass on the joy of our faith, and we've got to keep coming back to this, don't we? Let's take this a little bit further. Let's think about the psychology involved in this. The book that I wrote keeps coming back to virtues and how we inculcate habits in children, young children particularly. And what are the 4 cardinal virtues? What are the 4 great habits that Aristotle and Aquinas talked about? Prudence, justice, temperance, and fortitude. But temperance and fortitude are about managing our emotional life. If we can manage our emotional life, then we can think clearly, we can love wisely, we can love on the basis of our faith, not just love good food or something like that. Think this through. If we can manage our emotional life, if we have good habits of managing our emotional responses, when something is painful, we put up with it with a smile, if it's for a good reason, and we don't just keep seeking pleasure for the wrong reason. We know when to say no to ourselves. If we can manage our emotional reactions, then we can think clearly, we can love wisely, we can love God, we can love others. This is big. Now, by the way that you manage your emotional responses, your appetites, if you like, by the way you manage your desires, by the way you manage the good things that happen to you and the bad things that happen to you, by what goes on in your face, this is how you teach your child what is of true value in this world. What gives you joy is to be sought, is beautiful. You find joy in what is good, true, and beautiful. And this is what you want to pass on to your child. The joy on your face teaches your children what is of true value in this life. Let's apply this to Christmas. So what does this mean? This means that when you look at the child Jesus in the crib, this is something that gives you a lot of joy. When you talk about Christmas, when you bring joy into your home at Christmas time, when you realize Christmas is not about gifts and about getting wound up and going shopping and cooking the perfect Christmas dinner. And I mean, all of those things are nice, but it's what has been given to us by God, which gives us the joy of Christmas. And we must keep finding our joy in the child. There's a beautiful story. I don't know if, a big influence on me in my life has been Saint Josemaria. And there's a story about Saint Josemaria when he was a very young priest, that he was the chaplain in pre-Civil War Madrid, so tough time. In 1932, he was the chaplain of a convent. And on the 15th of October, the nuns in that convent, which was in danger of being burned down, showed him a child Jesus that they were going to put in their chapel for Christmas, a beautiful child. And Saint Josemaria talks about how he was completely blown away by that child and how he started to talk to that child Jesus in his heart. And then the next day he said that in a tram car in Madrid, he had the most elevated prayer of his life. What's the point? Somehow, if we put all of our heart and all of our attention into what is essential at Christmas time, we will draw from that great joy. We will understand the great message that Christmas is and how our response to that has to be joyful gratitude. And that will help us pray, and it will help your children pray. You'll sit around the crib in your lounge room on Christmas Eve and you'll pray. You'll say the rosary together. You'll talk to Our Lady. You'll read the new letter from the Pope about St. Joseph, and you'll talk to your kids about what a beautiful letter this is and how it helps us put ourselves in Joseph's shoes at Christmas time. as the baby is about to be born. We need to keep coming back to this, because if we don't show in our faces how fortunate we are as Catholics, then we will not pass on to our children the joy of Catholicism. And if we don't pass on to children the joy of Catholicism, then they may walk away from their faith by mistake, and that would be a tragedy. So think this through. Let me leave you with 3 last thoughts. First, remember that joy is a consequence of 2 things. It's a consequence of possession of what is truly good and true and beautiful. And we possess this in our lives. And it's not just the possession of it, because we have this in grace, whether we think about it or not, but it's the possession of this and the explicit awareness of it that gives us joy. You'll be joyful, I will be joyful at Christmas time if we make a conscious effort to pray more. And our prayer is full of love for the child and for Mary and Joseph, and full of gratitude to Mary and Joseph and the child and God the Father. So that's the first thing, that love and gratitude will generate joy. And if we're not joyful, we really should do a stocktake, because we will realize very quickly that it's become all about me, and it's not about me being grateful to God. Christmas is not about us. It's about focusing our attention on the child. Think about this. We pay attention to what we value. So if we value shopping more than prayer to the Holy Family, then we won't think about the Holy Family, we'll just think about shopping. If we have such a formal approach to our religion that we think religion should be, between 8 and 9 a.m. on Christmas morning, that's a disaster. And it's better than nothing, but our faith has to fill our lives, not just fill 1 hour on Christmas Day. Okay, second point is that Christmas is about the child first of all. So we have to pay attention to the child. And if we do so, we will pray very deeply. But we have to pay attention to the child. I mean, think about holding a baby in your arms and the great joy that gives you. But we must apply that to our own faith. And thirdly, let's draw on that joy. A favourite author of mine, by background I'm an English teacher, but a favourite author of mine is a woman called Sigrid Undset. And Sigrid Undset, she was already famous. She had already won the Nobel Prize in Norway. Sorry, she was Norwegian. She had already won the Nobel Prize for her great medieval novels. And then the Second World War comes, and she's already a marked figure. The Nazis are after her because she's so outspokenly patriotic. Her son is killed in the first days of one of her 2 sons is killed in the first days of the fighting. She's caring for her handicapped daughter at the same time. And then she has to flee Norway, staying ahead of the Nazi advance. And she escapes across Russia to Vladivostok, and then from there she goes to the States. I mean, it's an adventure tale. When she gets to the States, she writes a beautiful book of reminiscences about Christmases in Norway when her children were young. She's just lost her son. But she writes the most beautiful book called Happy Days in Norway after she's escaped from the Nazi advance and after her son has been killed. We need to keep these great realities in front of us. She drew from that depth of understanding about the great gift of the child Jesus to humanity and what this means for our eternity. She drew from that consoling happiness, even in the face of this catastrophe that she was living out. So you and I have to make sure that we hang on to this deep reality and not let events take away our joy. Nothing can take away our joy. Think about it. It's a beautiful, consoling message, isn't it? But it's not easy to live, and it's really the task of a lifetime for us to keep coming back to this But in the meantime, we've got to fix our faces, because if we're not joyful, then we will not control the atmosphere in our homes. And if we don't control the atmosphere in our homes, we will drive our kids away. That's the message. Happy Christmas.